The crimson sunset bled across the parched Montana landscape as Catherine Dawson buried the last of her kin, the mound of fresh-turned earth joining 5 other graves on the hilltop, overlooking what remained of her homestead. The year was 1878, and in the 3 years since she'd come west as a bright-eyed bride, Catherine had watched death claim her husband, their infant son, her brother's family who'd joined them seeking fortune, and finally yesterday, her elderly father. Cholera had no mercy. "You've taken everyone," she whispered to the darkening sky, her voice breaking as she drove the wooden marker into the soil. At 23, Catherine stood alone in a wilderness that had promised so much and delivered only heartbreak. She didn't hear the approach of hoofbeats until they were nearly upon her. Turning sharply, she clutched her father's old revolver, drawn from the folds of her black mourning dress. The figure that emerged from the growing twilight rode tall in the saddle, the silhouette of his wide-brimmed hat distinctive against the fading light. "State your business or ride on," Catherine called, her finger steady on the trigger despite her exhaustion. "I've nothing left to take." The rider slowed his paint horse to a gentle walk, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "Just passing through, madam. Saw the fresh graves and thought someone might need assistance." His voice carried a slight drawl, but it was gentle, almost melodic. As he came closer, Catherine could make out his features, a weather-beaten face that suggested he was perhaps 30, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. His clothes were dusty from the trail, but even in the dying light, she could see they were of good quality. "Death took everyone," she said flatly, lowering her gun just slightly. "I've no need for assistance." The stranger dismounted with an easy grace that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair, and offered a sad smile that reached his eyes. "It missed me," he said quietly. "I'm here for you, if you'll allow it. Even if it's just to help with those graves, no one should shoulder such a burden alone." Catherine studied him, this stranger who'd appeared from nowhere as if summoned by her grief. "I don't even know your name." Adam Ryder," he replied, extending a hand that was calloused from work, but surprisingly gentle when she finally took it. "And you are?" "Catherine Dawson, Widow Dawson, I suppose." Adam nodded respectfully toward the graves. "I'm sorry for your losses, Mrs. Dawson, truly." For a moment, Catherine considered sending him away, but the thought of returning to the empty cabin, where silence and memories waited like hungry wolves, made her shudder. "There's stew on the stove if you're hungry. Least I can offer for your kindness." Adam's smile was warm. "That's mighty generous. I'd be honored to accept." As they walked down the hill toward the modest cabin that had once housed such hope, Catherine wondered if she was being foolish, inviting a stranger into her home. But something in Adam Ryder's steady gaze told her she had nothing to fear from this man. The cabin was small but solid, built by her husband Thomas and her brother James with logs from the surrounding pines. A single lantern burned in the window, casting a golden glow into the gathering darkness. "It's not much," Catherine said as she pushed open the door, "but it was going to be something special once upon a time." Adam removed his hat and coat, hanging them on a peg by the door with a respectful care. "It's a fine home, Mrs. Dawson." "Catherine," she corrected him, suddenly tired of the formality that reminded her of all she had lost. "If you're to help me bury my dead, you might as well use my name." "Catherine," he repeated, the sound of her name in his voice oddly comforting. She busied herself with ladling stew into bowls, aware of Adam's presence as he looked around the cabin. His eyes lingered on the empty cradle in the corner, but he asked no questions. "You mentioned you were passing through," Catherine said as they sat at the rough-hewn table. "Where are you headed?" Adam took a spoonful of stew before answering. "Nowhere in particular. I've been moving west for some time. Used to run cattle in Texas, then worked as a ranch foreman in Wyoming. Now I'm just looking, I suppose." "For what?" His eyes met hers across the table. "I'll know when I find it." They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the clink of spoons against bowls and the occasional pop from the fireplace. Catherine found herself studying his hands, strong, capable hands that seemed at odds with the gentleness in his manner. "How did you come to be here?" Adam asked eventually. "This isn't easy country, especially for a family starting out." Catherine sighed, setting down her spoon. My husband Thomas had dreams bigger than our plot in Illinois. Heard tales of the Montana Territory, how a man could build something lasting here. My brother followed with his wife and children. Father came last year after mother passed. Her voice caught. Now it's just me. Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. And what will you do now? I don't know, Catherine admitted, the words painful in their honesty. I've nowhere to go back to. This land is paid for, but I can't work it alone. You could sell. To whom? This valley isn't exactly crowded with buyers, and even if I could, where would I go? What would I do? She shook her head. No, I'll figure something out. I have to. Adam was silent for a long moment. I could stay a while, he offered finally. Help you get things in order. No strings attached, no expectations. Just one human helping another. Catherine should have been suspicious. Men didn't offer help without wanting something in return, especially in these parts. But exhaustion and grief had worn away her caution, and something in Adam's straightforward gaze told her his offer was genuine. I can't pay you, she said. I'm not asking for payment. Why would you do this? You don't know me. Adam set down his spoon, his expression serious. Because 8 years ago I buried my wife and son after a Comanche raid. I know what it is to stand alone with a shovel in hand, wondering how the world can just keep turning when everything you love is gone. His words struck Catherine like a physical blow. Here was someone who truly understood the hollow ache that consumed her. I'm sorry, she whispered. As am I, for your losses, he replied. But I learned something, Catherine. The dead need our remembrance, but they don't need our company. Not yet. That night, Catherine gave Adam blankets to make a bed on the floor near the fireplace, while she retreated to the small bedroom she had once shared with Thomas. Sleep eluded her as it had for days, her mind churning with decisions and doubts. Dawn found her still awake, watching the first gray light filter through the simple curtains. She rose quietly, expecting to find Adam still sleeping, but the main room was empty, the blankets neatly folded. For a moment she thought he had gone, another fleeting presence in a life marked by departures, but then she heard the rhythmic sound of an axe splitting wood. Looking through the window, she saw Adam working steadily at the chopping block, already having created a substantial pile of firewood. Catherine watched him for a while, this stranger who had appeared when she needed someone most. There was something compelling about his focus, the economical way he moved, the strength in his frame that spoke of a life lived outdoors. When he paused to wipe his brow, Catherine stepped outside with a cup of coffee. You didn't have to do that, she said, offering the steaming mug. Adam accepted it with a grateful nod. Seemed like a good way to start the day. You're running low on supplies, though. I noticed when I checked the pantry earlier. I know. Father and I were supposed to ride to town yesterday. Catherine wrapped her arms around herself against the morning chill. Nearest trading post is at Miller's Crossing, about 10 miles east. I could go for you. Bring back what you need. Catherine shook her head. I should go myself. Need to inform the authorities about... She glanced toward the hill with its row of markers. Adam's expression softened with understanding. We'll go together then, if you're up to it. 2 hours later, they set out on the trail to Miller's Crossing, Catherine riding her mare Juniper while Adam led his paint, which he had introduced as Domino. The morning was bright, the sky an endless Montana blue that seemed to mock her grief with its perfection. How long have you been traveling? Catherine asked as they rode side by side along the rutted trail. Near 3 years now, Adam replied. After Texas, there didn't seem much reason to stay in one place. That's a long time to be rootless. Adam glanced at her, a slight smile touching his lips. Roots need the right soil. Haven't found it yet, I suppose. And before? You mentioned a ranch in Wyoming? Circle R. Good outfit. Owner was fair. Men were decent. I ran his herd for 5 years before... He trailed off. Before what? Adam's jaw tightened slightly. Before Broken Rock. Catherine waited, sensing there was more to the story. Cattle war, he elaborated finally. Neighbor decided he wanted Circle R water rights. Men died. Ranch was burned. His voice grew quieter. I survived when others didn't. Again. That seems to be your talent, Catherine observed. Surviving. Not sure it's a talent so much as a curse sometimes, Adam said, his eyes on the horizon. But here I am. Miller's Crossing was little more than a collection of wooden buildings, straddling a creek crossing a general store, a saloon, a small church, and a handful of cabins. It hardly warranted being called a town, but it served as the commercial and social hub for the scattered homesteads within a day's ride. As they hitched their horses outside the general store, Catherine was acutely aware of her black dress, the visible sign of her mourning. She felt the curious stares of the few people on the dusty street. "Mrs. Dawson," a woman's voice called. Abigail Miller, wife of the store owner, hurried toward them, her round face creased with concern. "We've been wondering about you all. Your father said you'd be coming in days ago." Catherine straightened her shoulders, preparing herself for the conversation she dreaded. "My father passed 2 days ago, Mrs. Miller. The fever took him, same as the others." Abigail's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, my dear girl. All of them? All gone?" Her eyes darted to Adam, standing respectfully behind Catherine. "This is Mr. Ryder," Catherine said, suddenly aware how it might appear her arriving with an unknown man so soon after her losses. He was passing through and offered assistance. Adam tipped his hat. "Madam?" Abigail's expression shifted, caution replacing sympathy. "I see. Well, you come inside, Catherine. Robert will want to know. And Sheriff Tate should be notified about your father." The next hour passed in a blur of sympathy and questions. Robert Miller expressed his condolences while calculating the supplies Catherine could afford on credit. Sheriff Tate, a gruff man with a perpetual squint, took down the details of the deaths with an official disinterest that somehow made it easier to bear. Throughout it all, Adam remained a quiet presence at her side, offering support without intrusion. Catherine was surprised by how grateful she felt for his steadying presence. "Where will you go now?" Abigail asked as Catherine prepared to leave. "You shouldn't be out there alone. My sister and Helena might have room." "I'm staying," Catherine interrupted. "It's my home." Abigail exchanged a meaningful glance with her husband. "Catherine, be sensible. A woman alone in that valley." "She's not alone right now," Adam said, his voice gentle but firm. "And I suspect Mrs. Dawson is more than capable of making her own decisions." Robert Miller frowned. "And who exactly are you, Mr. Ryder?" "Not from these parts, clearly." "Just passing through," Adam replied easily, offering a helping hand where needed. "How convenient," Sheriff Tate muttered, eyeing Adam with suspicion. "Got any papers, references?" "Sheriff," Catherine interjected, irritation flaring, "Mr. Ryder has been nothing but respectful and helpful. I don't need a committee to approve who assists me with my affairs." An uncomfortable silence fell over the store. Finally, Robert cleared his throat. "Your supplies will be ready in an hour, Mrs. Dawson, on credit, as we discussed." Outside, Catherine leaned against the hitching post, suddenly exhausted. "I apologize for that. They mean well." Adam shrugged. "They're protective of you. That's not a bad thing." "They're nosy," Catherine corrected him, "and judgmental. Abigail's been trying to match me with eligible men since before Thomas was cold in his grave." She sighed. "Though I suppose their concerns aren't entirely unfounded. A stranger appearing at my homestead, with me in such a vulnerable position." "Would you rather I left?" Adam asked directly. "Say the word, and I'll be on my way once we return to your place." Catherine studied his face, searching for any hint of deception or hidden motive. She found none, only a straightforward question, awaiting an honest answer. "No," she said finally. "I wouldn't rather that at all." The ride back to the homestead was quieter, both lost in their thoughts. The supplies from Miller's store were secured behind Adam's saddle floor, coffee, salt, and other necessities that would see Catherine through the next few weeks. Sheriff Tate had promised to send someone to officially document the graves, but it might be days before anyone came. As they crested the final rise overlooking the valley where her cabin stood, Catherine reined in her horse. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the land, her land. Despite everything, it was still beautiful. "My husband used to say this valley had a magic to it," she said softly, "that it would sustain us, protect us." A bitter laugh escaped her. He was wrong about that. Adam stopped beside her. "Maybe the land keeps its promises in ways we don't always understand. By taking everyone I love, what kind of promise is that?" "I can't answer that," Adam admitted, "but I do know that grief has a way of blinding us to possibilities we can't yet imagine." Catherine turned to look at him, struck by his words. "You sound like you've given this considerable thought." Had plenty of time to think riding these trails alone. That evening, after they'd stabled the horses and stored the supplies, Adam built up the fire while Catherine prepared a simple meal of beans and cornbread. The domesticity of it felt strange, almost like playing at a life that wasn't hers anymore. "Tell me about Texas," she said as they ate, needing to focus on something other than her own troubles. "I've never been further south than St. Louis." Adam's expression warmed with memory. "Texas is bigger than you can imagine. Sky goes on forever and the land rolls out like an ocean frozen in time." He described the ranch where he'd grown up, the cattle drives to Kansas railheads, the camaraderie of cowboys around campfires under star-filled skies. "And your wife?" Catherine asked gently. "What was she like?" A shadow crossed Adam's face, but his voice remained steady. "Sarah was light. That's the word that always comes to mind. She brought light into every room, every conversation." He traced a pattern on the tablecloth with his finger. "We met when I delivered cattle to her father's ranch. She was helping with the books, arguing with the foreman about the count. Wasn't afraid to stand her ground, even surrounded by dusty cowboys who towered over her." "She sounds remarkable." "She was." Adam's smile was tinged with sadness. "Our son David had her spirit. Just turned 4 when—" He stopped, then continued more softly. "When they were taken." Catherine reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. It was an instinctive gesture, one human connecting with another in shared grief. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Adam turned his hand to briefly clasp hers. "As am I for your losses." That night, as Catherine lay in bed listening to the wind whispering through the pines, she realized it was the first day since her father's passing that she hadn't been consumed by grief. The pain was still there, a constant ache, but somehow Adam's presence had made it bearable. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Adam repaired the chicken coop and mended the corral fence while Catherine tended her small garden and preserved what vegetables remained. They worked side by side to clear a field that had gone fallow during the family's illness. They spoke often, sharing stories of their pasts, Catherine of her childhood in Illinois, the daughter of a schoolteacher who had instilled in her a love of books, Adam of his years driving cattle and the characters he had met on the trail. Gradually, Catherine began to notice things about Adam beyond his kindness and capability. The way sunlight caught in his hair, the deep timbre of his laugh on the rare occasions she managed to amuse him, the grace with which he moved despite his size. A week after Adam's arrival, Sheriff Tate rode out with the county clerk to document the deaths. Catherine stood stiffly as they examined the graves and asked clinical questions about the progression of the disease. Adam remained nearby, a steady presence at her back. "All seems in order," the clerk said finally, closing his ledger. "The property passes to you as next of kin, Mrs. Dawson. You'll need to come to the county seat to sign the final papers, but that can wait until winter passes." Sheriff Tate's eyes narrowed as he looked between Catherine and Adam. "You planning to stay out here alone, Mrs. Dawson?" "I am," Catherine replied firmly. "And you, Ryder? Just happened to arrive at the opportune moment to help a widow in distress?" Adam met the sheriff's gaze calmly. "I was passing through. Seemed the decent thing to do." "Mighty convenient timing." Catherine stepped forward. "Sheriff, I appreciate your concern, but Mr. Ryder has been nothing but respectful and helpful. I've no complaints about his presence." Tate grunted. "Just be careful, Mrs. Dawson. These hills attract all sorts of men with motives that ain't always pure." After they left, Catherine found Adam in the barn, brushing down Domino with long, methodical strokes. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "The sheriff is doing his job," Adam finished for her. "Can't fault a man for that. Still, the insinuation that you might—" "It's a reasonable concern," Adam continued, brushing the horse, his movements unhurried. "A stranger appears just as a woman finds herself alone and vulnerable. I'd be suspicious, too." Catherine leaned against a post, watching him work. "When will you go?" she asked, the question that had been hovering between them for days. Adam's hands stilled. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No." The answer came quickly, surprising even herself with its certainty. "I'm asking when you will, because everyone always does." Adam set the brush aside and turned to face her fully. "Catherine, I have no plans to leave until you no longer need or want my help. I gave you my word." And after that, when winter comes and the passes close, a moment of silence stretched between them. I don't know, he admitted finally. I haven't thought that far ahead. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains, bringing with it driving rain that hammered against the cabin roof. Catherine sat by the fire, mending a shirt by the light of an oil lamp while Adam cleaned his revolver at the table, his movements precise and practiced. Have you used that often? She asked, nodding toward the weapon. Adam's hands never paused in their work. More than I'd like. Less than some men. To kill? His eyes flicked up to meet hers. Yes. Does it trouble you? The taking of life? Adam considered her question carefully before answering. It troubles me that it was necessary. The act itself. He reassembled the revolver with smooth efficiency. In the moment, you don't think. You just act to protect what matters. Thunder crashed overhead, making the cabin windows rattle. Catherine set aside her mending, suddenly restless. I keep thinking about what Sheriff Tate said, about being careful. That's wise advice. Is it? She stood, moving to the window to watch rain lashing against the glass. I've spent my whole life being careful, Adam, followed all the rules, did what was expected. And where did it get me? Everyone I love is in the ground. Adam remained silent, watching her with those steady eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. Maybe careful isn't what I need to be anymore, she continued, turning to face him. Maybe I need to trust my own judgment for once. And what is your judgment telling you? Adam asked quietly. Catherine held his gaze. That you're a good man. That I'm glad you're here. The storm continued through the night and into the next day, turning the yard into a sea of mud and making outdoor work impossible. Catherine used the time to sort through her family's belongings, a task she had been avoiding. Adam helped her carry trunks from the loft, then tactfully gave her privacy as she went through the contents. It was painful work, each item a memory, each memory a fresh wound. Thomas's Sunday shirt, still smelling faintly of the bay rum he'd favored, her brother James's pocket watch, the tiny gown her son had worn for his baptism, never outgrown. By afternoon, Catherine was emotionally exhausted. She found Adam whittling by the fire, his hands creating something from a piece of pine with patient skill. What are you making? She asked, sinking into a chair opposite him. He turned the piece so she could see a small horse taking shape under his knife. Just passing time, my father taught me, said idle hands were the devil's workshop. It's beautiful, Adam smiled, the expression warming his face in a way that made Catherine's heart beat faster. It'll do, something to remember Domino by when I'm too old to ride. You think about that? Growing old? Sometimes, more than I used to. His knife continued to move, making delicate cuts. There was a time after Sarah and David died when I didn't much care if I saw another sunrise. Now, he shrugged. Now I wonder what it might be like to watch seasons change from the same porch year after year. The admission hung in the air between them, revealing more than perhaps he had intended. Catherine found herself imagining Adam in his later years, still tall but with silver at his temples, sitting on a porch watching a sunset. I think you'd wear it well, she said softly. Age. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of possibilities neither was ready to name. That evening, as they shared a meal of rabbit stew and the last of the cornbread, Adam spoke of his plans for the following day. The storm's cleared enough that I should be able to repair that section of roof that's been leaking, and the north fence needs shoring up before winter sets in. Catherine nodded, touched by his consideration. You don't have to do all this, Adam. I know. He helped himself to more stew. But it needs doing, and I'm here to do it. And what do I owe you for all this work? She asked, only half joking. Seems I'm getting the better end of this arrangement. Adam considered her question seriously. Tell me something you've never told anyone else, he said finally. Something true. Catherine blinked, surprised by the request. That's all? That's all. She thought for a moment, then set down her spoon. I was relieved when Thomas said we were leaving Illinois, she admitted quietly. Everyone thought I was devastated to leave my home, but the truth is I felt suffocated there. Everyone knew exactly who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to want. Coming west was terrifying, but it was also freeing. Adam nodded, accepting her confession without judgment. "Thank you for that truth." "And you?" Catherine asked. "What's something you've never told anyone?" A slight smile touched his lips. "That wasn't part of the deal. I'm amending the terms." Adam leaned back in his chair, studying her with a warmth that made her cheeks flush. "All right. Something true." He was quiet for a moment. "I haven't slept through the night since Sarah and David died. Not once in 8 years. I wake every night between midnight and dawn, reaching for someone who isn't there." The raw honesty of his confession caught Catherine off guard. "Adam," he shook his head. "It's just a truth, not looking for pity." "It's not pity to care about someone's pain," she said gently. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, Catherine thought Adam might say more. Instead, he rose and began clearing the dishes. "Getting late. We both should rest if we're to get anything done tomorrow." The following days brought clear skies and cooler temperatures, a reminder that winter would soon descend on the valley. Adam worked tirelessly on the cabin and outbuildings, making repairs that Catherine's family had postponed during their illness. Catherine found herself watching him when he wasn't looking the competent way he handled tools, the concentration in his expression as he measured twice before cutting, the strength in his arms as he lifted a beam into place. It had been nearly 3 weeks since he'd appeared on the hilltop, and Catherine realized with a start that she had begun to imagine a future with him in it. The thought both exhilarated and terrified her. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Catherine gathered her courage. "Winter comes early to these mountains," she said, trying to sound casual. "First snows could be just weeks away." Adam nodded. "I've been thinking the same. Need to split more firewood before then. The passes to the east can close quickly. If you're planning to move on before spring, you shouldn't wait too long." Adam turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Is that what you want? For me to move on?" Catherine took a deep breath. "No," she said honestly. "That's not what I want at all." "What do you want, Catherine?" The directness of his question demanded equal honesty. "I want you to stay. Through winter. Longer, perhaps. She faltered, then forced herself to continue. "I've come to care for you, Adam. More than I expected. More than might be wise." Adam was silent for so long that Catherine's heart began to sink. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "Catherine, when I came here I had no intention of staying. No intention of—" He gestured between them. "This. Whatever is growing between us." "I understand," she said quickly, embarrassment flooding her. "I shouldn't have presumed—" "No, you don't understand," Adam interrupted, reaching for her hand. "I didn't intend it, but that doesn't mean I don't feel it too. I do, more than I thought possible." Hope flickered to life in Catherine's chest. "Then why do I sense a but coming?" Adam's thumb traced circles on her palm, the simple touch sending warmth through her entire body. "Because I've been running for 8 years, because I'm not sure I remember how to stay in one place, because I'm afraid of caring this much again and losing everything a second time." "I'm afraid too," Catherine admitted, "of being alone again, of watching you ride away like everyone else has." Adam brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I can promise you this winter," he said. "Beyond that, I can't make promises I'm not certain I can keep, but I want to try, Catherine. God help me, I want to try." The first kiss they shared was on that porch, as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared overhead. It was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened into something that spoke of long, banked fires finally allowed to burn. When they pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Catherine saw in Adam's eyes the same mixture of wonder and desire that coursed through her own body. "We should go inside," he said, his voice rough. Catherine nodded, leading him by the hand through the door that closed behind them on a world that suddenly held more promise than it had in years. Later, lying in the darkness with Adam's arm around her, Catherine traced the outline of a scar on his shoulder. "How did you get this?" she asked. "Broken rock. Bullet grazed me when the shooting started." "And this one?" Her fingers found another mark on his ribs. Cattle Stampede 71, got caught between a steer and a rock wall. Catherine continued her exploration, learning the map of his body with gentle touches. You've lived a dangerous life, Adam Ryder. He captured her hand, bringing it to rest over his heart. No more dangerous than yours, just different risks. What do you mean? You risked everything to come west, left behind safety, certainty. That takes as much courage as facing a gun. Catherine considered this. I never thought of it that way. Most brave people don't recognize their own courage, Adam said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. It's just doing what needs to be done. In the weeks that followed, as autumn painted the valley in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Adam and Catherine fell into a new rhythm, working side by side during the day, sharing meals and conversation in the evenings, and nights of tender discovery that healed old wounds neither had thought would ever close. They rode to Miller's Crossing together to stock supplies for winter. Catherine noted with amusement how differently they were received now that Adam was clearly more than a passing stranger. Staying through winter, then? Robert Miller asked as he tallied their substantial order of flour, coffee, sugar, and other necessities. Yes, Adam replied simply, his hand resting lightly at the small of Catherine's back. Abigail's eyebrows rose, but she had the grace not to comment directly. Well, you'll need more blankets then. And Catherine, I've some patterns for men's shirts if you're interested. Word traveled fast in small communities. By the time they left the store, several people had stopped to greet them, curiosity barely disguised beneath neighborly inquiries about preparations for the coming winter. Sheriff Tate intercepted them as they loaded their supplies. Mrs. Dawson, he nodded, then fixed Adam with an appraising look. Ryder, heard you're planning to stay on. That's right, Adam confirmed, meeting the sheriff's gaze steadily. Any reason I should be concerned about that? Catherine stepped forward. None whatsoever, Sheriff. Mr. Ryder and I are... She hesitated, suddenly unsure how to define what they had become to each other. Taking things one day at a time, Adam finished smoothly, but with honorable intentions. The sheriff studied them both, then nodded slowly. Well, winter's a good test of any arrangement. You need anything, Mrs. Dawson, you send word. As they rode home, Catherine glanced at Adam. Honorable intentions? She queried, a smile playing at her lips. Adam's expression remained serious. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it. Catherine. And what exactly are your intentions, Mr. Ryder? He reined in his horse, waiting for her to do the same. When they were side by side on the trail, he reached across to take her hand. To build something lasting with you, if you'll have me, he said simply. I can't promise it'll be easy. Can't promise I won't wake some mornings with the old restlessness, but I can promise to try every day to be worthy of your trust. Catherine's heart swelled. I think I can live with those terms, Mr. Ryder. The first snow came earlier than expected, dusting the valley with white in mid-October. By November, the drifts were deep enough to make travel difficult, and by December, the pass to Miller's Crossing was closed completely. Catherine found the isolation far less daunting with Adam by her side. Long evenings were filled with reading aloud from her small collection of books, Adam whittling by the fire while she sewed, and conversations that ranged from philosophical to practical to deeply personal. Do you miss Texas? She asked one night as wind howled outside the snug cabin. Adam considered the question. Parts of it. The spring wildflowers, the vastness of the sky. He looked up from the chess set he was slowly crafting, piece by piece. But I'm finding there are things about Montana that suit me just as well. Such as? His smile was tender. The company, for one. Christmas arrived with a blizzard that kept them housebound for 3 days. They exchanged simple gifts, a handkerchief Catherine had embroidered for Adam, and for her, a delicate wooden hairpin he had carved with painstaking care. It's beautiful, Catherine whispered, running her fingers over the intricate pattern of leaves and vines. Not half as beautiful as what it's meant to adorn, Adam replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Later, as they lay entwined beneath heavy quilts, Catherine voiced the question that had been growing in her mind. What happens when spring comes, Adam? He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her in the soft glow of the banked fire. "What would you like to happen?" "I'd like you to stay," she said without hesitation, "not just as a helper or whatever we are now, but permanently. As my husband, if that's something you would want." Adam's expression grew serious. "Catherine, are you certain? It's been less than 6 months since you lost your family." "I'm certain that I love you," she replied steadily. "I'm certain that life is too short and too unpredictable to deny what we've found together." She touched his face gently. "I'll always honor Thomas's memory, just as you'll always honor Sarah's. But we're still here. Still alive." Adam captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes, I want that too." They were married on the first truly warm day of spring, when the mountain passes had cleared enough for Reverend Larson to make the journey from Miller's Crossing. It was a simple ceremony in front of the cabin, with the Millers and a handful of neighbors as witnesses. Catherine wore a dress of soft blue calico, with Adam's carved hairpin securing her upswept hair. Adam had acquired a new shirt and vest for the occasion, and had shaved so closely that his jaw looked almost vulnerable. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she joined him before the Reverend. "So do you," she returned with a smile that made his heart skip. The vows they exchanged were traditional, but each word carried the weight of all they had overcome to reach this moment. When Reverend Larson pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering broke into genuine applause. Later, after their guests had departed and they were alone again, Adam led Catherine to the porch. The setting sun bathed the valley in golden light, highlighting the new green of spring grass and the distant snowcaps still clinging to the highest peaks. "I have something to show you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. Taking her hand, he led her to the barn, where he unlocked a trunk she hadn't seen before. From it, he withdrew a carefully wrapped package. "I've been working on this when you weren't looking," he explained, handing it to her. Catherine unwrapped the cloth to reveal a wooden sign, beautifully carved and polished. It read, "Ryder Ranch," in flowing script, with the date of their wedding beneath it. "Adam," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth letters. "I thought, if we're going to build something here, it should have a proper name." He watched her anxiously. "If you'd rather keep Dawson, I understand." Catherine silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect," she said when they finally parted. "Absolutely perfect." That summer, they expanded the vegetable garden and repaired the irrigation ditch that Thomas had begun but never completed. Adam traded work with neighboring ranchers to acquire a small herd of cattle, the beginning of what he hoped would grow into a profitable operation. Catherine discovered she was expecting their child as autumn once again painted the valley in gold and crimson. The news brought both joy and trepidation. Memories of her infant son's death still cast shadows over her happiness. "It will be different this time," Adam assured her, holding her close as they sat on the porch, watching a thunderstorm roll across the distant mountains. "We're stronger together. And this valley—" He gestured to the land around them. "Maybe it kept its promises after all." "What do you mean?" Catherine asked, her hand resting on the slight swell of her belly. "You said once that your husband believed this land would sustain and protect you." Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Maybe it did, in its way. It brought me to you when we both needed someone most." Catherine considered this, watching lightning illuminate the distant peaks. "That's a comforting thought, that even in our darkest moments, something was guiding us toward each other." "I don't know if it was guidance or just blind luck," Adam said honestly, "but I do know I'm grateful for whatever forces brought me up that hill on that particular evening." Their daughter, Sarah Elizabeth Ryder, was born the following spring, a healthy, robust child with her father's determined chin and her mother's bright eyes. Adam wept when he first held her, this miracle he had never expected to experience again. "She's perfect," he whispered, watching tiny fingers curl around his much larger one. "Absolutely perfect." 2 years later, they welcomed a son, Thomas James, named for the men Catherine had loved and lost. The cabin expanded to accommodate their growing family, with Adam adding rooms and a proper covered porch where they could sit and watch the changing seasons. Word of the Ryder Ranch spread through the territory. Adam's skill with cattle and Catherine's shrewd business sense made them modestly prosperous, enough to hire help during the busiest seasons and to ensure their children would have opportunities neither of them had enjoyed in their youth. On the 10th anniversary of the day Adam had found Catherine on the hilltop, they returned to the row of graves that they had maintained with respectful care over the years. Fresh flowers adorned each marker, a tradition Catherine observed monthly. "Do you ever regret staying?" Catherine asked as they stood hand in hand before the silent monuments to her first family. Adam considered the question seriously, as he did all questions from his wife. "Not for a moment," he said finally. "There are days I miss the open trail, the freedom of having nowhere particular to be. But those moments pass quickly when I remember what I'd be leaving behind." Catherine squeezed his hand. "I used to think death had taken everything from me," she said softly. "That day when you found me here, I couldn't imagine ever feeling whole again. And now?" She turned to him, the years having added character to her beauty rather than diminishing it. "Now I know that grief isn't the end of the story. It's just a chapter, a painful one, but not the final word." Adam drew her into his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "Death missed me," he murmured, echoing words spoken a decade earlier. "And I'm still here for you." "And I for you," Catherine replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss the man who had helped her rebuild not just a homestead, but a life worth living. Always. As they walked back to the house where their children waited, the setting sun painted the valley in shades of gold and crimson, a reminder that even as seasons changed and years passed, some things like the love they had found in the most unexpected of circumstances would endure.